Yo, 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 good afternoon, everybody. Here's a trade that we did on OCLS last week. This is one of my favorite types of plays. And so, this is kind of a short trade on a fader on earnings news. So, earnings or PR news. Oftentimes, earnings and PRs can be the catalyst that can really make stocks go for days and days. And on the other side of things, if the news is not received properly, you can get a good fade. And so we really had a great trade in this particular stock, shorting it, around the 630 average and covering into the next day our last shares, around, the 460 area. And kind of how we did this was, really you got to read your, intraday charts when you're in a trade like this to watch the action, because you don't necessarily know if the trade is going to start to fly to the upside or the downside, right? Sometimes these stocks fly to the upside and sometimes they fade. And so for us, what we had to do is really, really watch the action to get a good idea of, what could happen. So you could see right off the bat, right, this stock just flew to the upside to $7 and, immediately started to fade back, right? If you see that here. And then you can see like it keeps trying to bounce, but it doesn't have, right, it doesn't start to really take out any resistance. It just kind of keeps fading back, and so you see it bounce and fade back and bounce and fade back. And so finally it comes here to support. And usually when your support gets real close, that can kind of cause a squeeze up, and it can break the high of the day. And if that doesn't happen, that's kind of a telltale sign that, this stock is not getting received properly. And so the stock tries to squeeze, and then it doesn't hold. And so when that happens, we have an idea that the stock is probably going to be a fader. And so initially what I did here is right around this area, around the 625 area, I shorted 2,000 shares of this. And I knew that this kind of like the 6 area would really have to crack for this thing to flush. And so, this thing hit support again. It tried to hit 6, tried to squeeze up to the upside again, right? And see, once again, it doesn't go. So what do we have here is like lower highs. And so once this fade was in and it couldn't break out, right, we added more shares to our short in the 630s to play the flush. And so now you can see what happens, right? It starts to grind lower and it starts to really coil up. And so then once it busts loose, that's when you get the rainfall. And so, my particular strategy, and you don't have to do it this way, some people will actually ride the stock lower, is to really scale out and take profits. And so, once on this first dump, once we got into the 5.8 range, I cover 1,000 shares. And once we go a little bit lower, I cover another 1,000 shares. And then we keep flushing down into the 530s, I cover another 500 shares. And, I hold partially overnight as this stock, since the whole gap is basically fading off, it's a good shot that it can fade into the next day. And so, into the next day, we cover the rest, around 460. I actually got I smoked myself here on the squeeze higher here. I covered, and there was really no reason to. It was just kind of filling the gap, and then it came back down and really, tested the 4 level, which was my target. So, overall good trade. I probably should have not covered this end. I kind of freaked myself out. And I think maybe one of the other things I could have done better is, see, I didn't have necessarily any reason to start covering my shares. In my quest to scale out, and the fact that I was right up, $1,000, $2,000 all the way down, I started scaling out when I realistically could have just rode the stock lower, as it gave me no reason to cover, as it was a pretty steady, just drip lower and lower. Oftentimes if you get a big panic sell, you want to kind of cover into it, but this is a real steady grinder of selling. And so I could have ridden it a little bit longer. But, overall made, almost a few $1,000s on this trade, just using, just some simple intuition and chart reading. This is what we do every day. So let me know if you have any questions, guys, and take care.